Welcome to the Shema Podcast, the podcast for the perplexed, where Torah insights, intertwined through personal stories, as well as interviews with leading Torah scholars, demonstrate the empowering qualities of Torah and mitzvot. Now to the show.
Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of the Shema Podcast. As promised, I am here to deliver some ideas to consider and think about during the Passover Seder. I wanted to first begin by talking about the overall process for many of you who may be sort of new to this process. But what we are undergoing right now is not something that leads to Pesach. What we are experiencing now is something in a journey that takes us all the way to Shavuos, and is a time to make transformative change in our life. I mean, this is the time to do it. This is what the Almighty wants from us. And I want to sort of go over the overall roadmap, because my plan, God willing, is to do episodes each week through each transitional phase and help develop some tools and ideas to be contemplating to really get the most out of it. So as we know, now we are in exile, and I will talk more about that in a bit. The idea we discussed in the last episode was about identifying who our Pharaohs are, what we worry about, what we fear other than Hashem, to understand the principles of the mental exile of, one, not knowing that Hashem is orchestrating everything in our life, two, not knowing that he loves us, three, suspecting that he may be mistreating us, our fourth, not believing in ourselves. This is the exile. We need to be humble enough to recognize where we may be trapped, and we all are. Everyone is at a certain level. I mean, there's no one on the planet that's not trying to grow from this experience, but we need to remove ourselves from it. And first, it's identifying what in our own personal lives is keeping us in exile. But when we get to Pesach, we have 2 nights of Pesach. And those 2 Seders are very different. The first Seder we come into, we get a lot of bestowal from above. We get a lot of inspiration, and it brings a lot of energy to really focus on the evening. Night 2 comes around, and then this again is after you wrap up your Seder by, I think, halakhic midnight is around 1:20 in Houston. So we wrap it up by then. You escort your guest out, say goodbyes, get to cleaning, and then I've signed up for Nate's Minions, so it's not going to be a very long night of sleep. And so you can come into the second night a little exhausted, a little less motivated, a little less inspired. But here's the deal. The second night, that's the most powerful night. And I will tell you why. As I discussed in the last episode, when we received the Torah at Mount Sinai after the Exodus from Egypt, that was all a bestowal from above. And that is the reason it did not hold. That's why the sin of the golden calf and the other failures that we have experienced throughout our lives. And I'm phrasing that like our individual lives, but I think we can come to the conclusion that there are parts of our soul that were there at Mount Sinai, whether they'd been born or whether we had lived lives then, that are still coming into this world and needing to be rectified. But the final redemption, the reason that will be permanent, the reason that will hold, is because it will be as a bestowal from below. We will pull it down. And that is what the second night Passover is about. As much less inspired you may feel a little more fatigued, but it's a time to work up your energy level and your inspiration, because the second night is what is so important. But then when we go through this experience at Pesach, what is taking place the following week leading up to the second days of Pesach is our journey from Mitzrayim to the Sea of Reeds. And so the seventh day of Pesach is when we were standing at that raging sea. Don't think that sea was nice, calm, still waters. It was raging, according to Midrash. Huge waves and rain. And that was the challenge, to walk through that, taking all the inspiration they had seen from Hashem, demonstrating his might and his power and his love for us. But when you take that and you're actually standing in front of physicality, it can be scary and be hard to walk through. But next week, what I plan to do is go through some exercises and thoughts and things we can do to identify what our Sea of Reeds are. What is it that is keeping us from moving forward so we can walk through with confidence and emunah? But then we get into the counting of the Omer, 7 weeks, 7 midos. And it actually gets more minute than that on a day-to-day basis. But what I plan to do is walk through that, each midos that we are refining, because the idea here, my friends, is that as we go through and refine each of our midos, which means measurements, our character traits, we want to align those with Hashem, to forge us into the image of Hashem. The more those 7 emotional qualities are in alignment with Hashem, the more the pipeline between us and him is opened up. So the more, when we get to Shavuos, the more Torah we can receive. And Torah, again, is the interface between our infinite internal creator and us. So that level of connection, as you can see, is dependent on each step along the way. One of the ideas I want to share with you is that, right now this week, for many of us, it's crazy when you are converting your home over to be kosher for Pesach. My wife on Sunday pulled out all the non-kosher food, wiped down the cabinets in the pantry, placed in the kosher food. She did the same thing for the fridge, but we're still, using non-kosher for Pesach items. For those of you who are new to this, it's not just bread and it's not just crackers. It's the amount of food that has chametz in it to some degree, or for us Ashkenazi Jews, corn syrup or some type of derivative, or was maybe processed in a place that had chametz. I mean, it's basically almost everything. Everything almost has to have a kosher for Pesach hechsher on it. We've been slowly transitioning over our kitchen, and the Jews here that are listening there from know what I'm talking about, but I'm trying to share this idea with those who are new to this. And so everything's in chaos. Like, we have all our foods that are not kosher for Pesach sitting on the kitchen table. I have the foods that are in the refrigerator in my office refrigerator, which is above the garage. So we're like basically trying to just eat and do things, and half the kitchen is koshered and the stove's koshered, but one of the sinks, and God, we have 2 sinks now, is not kosher, and we're using that. Everything's it's chaotic. And we're cleaning and we're checking everything and labels, and there's just a lot going on. And, and I will say this too, this is challenging for us, and it's just my wife and me and our 18-year-old daughter, and we're all neat freaks. My daughter's always been a very neat person. So, cleaning the house of chametz is not nearly the challenge of my holy brothers and sisters who have really fulfilled the mitzvah of having lots of children. Because you can imagine little kids running around with crackers and cookies throughout the year. Who knows where they took them, where they put them. I mean, they really have to go through everything, every cook and cranny of their home, vacuum out everything. Who knows what their kids took and where they put it. I'll tell you a funny story is the neighbors at the house we were renting when we first moved here told us that the father went to figure out what was wrong with the toilet. The flusher was jingling. It wasn't causing the flushing mechanism to work. So he opened up the tank to the toilet and found a half-eaten sandwich that his 5-year-old son put there. Within 5-year-old age, reason and logic, decided to store it there for later. So they always check their toilet bowl tanks too. probably those from listeners right now, they probably hit the pause button to go now in a frantic, go check the tank to their toilets, because who knows what young kids will do. But it's that chaos is what precedes change. And that is the whole idea, this hectic change going on. I want to share another idea as well. And I'm going to respond to a question from a dear friend offline. And he was asking, is there something going on now? Because a lot of the things that he was excelling at and growing at, like kavanah during prayer, increase emunah, things he'd been studying and learning, he feels like he's backtracking. And I feel that too. I researched it, and to answer his question, this is totally part of the process. In the Ramchal's book, The Path of the Just, he emphasized that the tests and challenges are, in fact, divinely orchestrated opportunities for growth right now. And it is a test of our resolve, especially in the area of emunah, bitachon, and I would say kavanah, and our intent fulfilling any mitzvot. I mean, this is the cornerstone of who we are. Everything else is sort of a support function for those tasks. And so through Hashem's direction, yes, he has authorized Yetzirah to put more resistance in our way. The Sifas Emes, in his commentary on Pesach, explains on this very matter that Israelites faced obstacles before the redemption. And likewise, individuals may encounter internal struggles as they approach personal spiritual breakthroughs. And the concept is rooted in the understanding that the Yetzirah intensifies its efforts when one is on the verge of significant spiritual advancement. So, my friends, if you are going through more challenges right now this week, Mazel Tov. It's a very positive sign. It's Hashem patting you on the back, giving you a kiss, saying, take this further. I was just thinking of this, but when I was in college working on my degree in finance, my academic advisor told me the last year, she said, you need to take a PE class. And I was like, why do I need to take PE? It's a finance degree, but it was a requirement. And I decided to take swimming because it's something I wanted to incorporate anyway into my workout routine. I thought it'd be a good idea. So I took this swimming course, and the instructor, the coach, advised all of us guys to get Speedos. Now, even before I was a frum Jew, Speedos were not kosher in my book. I don't want to wear a Speedo. I don't want to see a guy in a Speedo. So I was the only guy not wearing one of these awful Speedos in this class. I wore baggy, long swimsuits that went down to my knees. That's just how I roll. And the coach kept saying to me how I would be much faster if I didn't have the resistance of this bathing suit. And I was like the second fastest swimmer. And he kept saying, you are actually faster than that guy, but you're getting so much drag and resistance from the water by wearing these big baggy swim shorts. So he kept saying, if you got a Speedo, you would be faster than him. In the end, I emphasized back to him, I'm not wearing a Speedo. And I said, look, my goal here is not to be faster than that guy. My goal is to become a stronger swimmer. And so this additional resistance is helping me achieve that task. And I can assure you, when I have my degree, no one in the investment world is going to ask me whether or not I was the fastest swimmer in my PE class. So in the end, it doesn't matter. But the point is made that resistance is good. It strengthens us. So yes, if you feel Hashem putting more on you, he has authorized Yetzirah to do so. And he's doing it just because he knows you will have the resolve to stay strong and move forward. So Pesach is about this journey, and it really comes down to developing our emunah. And we know the matzah represents humility. Leavened bread represents something full of chametz, or metaphorically, the Yetzer Hara, the ego. And so know that the matzah is not just a symbol of humility. Hashem is emanating everything to existence in every moment. I will tell you that matzah has metaphysical properties that actually do allow you to achieve that. Removing all the chametz from your home is not a exercise in futility. Cleaning it all out, removing it from our home, removing ownership to it, and then only eating matzah is what will excel us in this area. It is about removing the Yetzer Hara, suppressing it, removing it more from within ourselves. If we want to accomplish that task, that is the goal. And the Almighty, through the various mitzvos, and therefore the halachos around this, has designed a system to allow us to reach great heights. I want to define humility a little more. I think it may conflict, if not defined properly, with equating with not believing in one's self. Let's first define what the opposite is: arrogance. Arrogance is being in a state of atheism. Arrogance is believing that you control everything around you and you have the power to do so. And that's why arrogance, because it really is a mindset of atheism, blocks us in our connection to Hashem. And arrogance always is, when you see people like this, it's a mask to hide their great insecurities. We are supposed to be confident and strong. So what's the difference between being confident and strong and being arrogant? Well, confidence comes from knowing that Hashem gave us unique talents, skills, abilities. They all came from Him. And He wants us to harness those to succeed in our life, to bring out that spiritual, perfected version of ourselves. So our confidence comes from knowing that if we focus on making Hashem's will our will, then Hashem will make our will His will. We have aligned ourselves with an infinite internal creator that loves us and wants us to excel and grow. That is where our confidence comes from, and it comes from humility. Humility builds confidence, because instead of a false delusion that we are in control of everything, when everyone really knows they're not, and they can't control things. When they do, they get frustrated and angry and further remove themselves from God. But we are confident because we know that the one who loves us controls everything, and they are going to orchestrate events in our life, always for the good. Which brings us to the Seder plate. I want to share a beautiful idea from Rav Moshe Weinberger about the order of the Seder plate when it's arranged according to the way of the Rizal. And the order is basically in alignment with the Pharaohs, something we discuss quite a bit because these are the component energies in which Hashem created the world in the way in which we are supposed to align with those. But he shares a very interesting idea here, very powerful. For one, to start with, on the right side, the shank bone we put there, which is shaped like an arm, is chesed, kindness. And whenever you hear Hashem reaching out with his right arm, that is right kindness. And then we have the egg on the left side of the plate, and that represents Gevurah, because the life force inside of an egg can't come into the world and can't be nurtured into a new living being without the constraints of the egg. And it's just like everything, chesed without Gevurah, without constraints, is frayed light. Chesed in the confines of mitzvos and halakha, that is what focuses that energy into a productive way that lets us let Hashem's light into the world. But the proper balance of those is Tiferes, beauty, compassion. And guess what's there in the center of the plate to represent Tiferes, beauty, compassion? It's the bitter herbs. And what Rav Moshe Weinberger says is that the reason Tiferes is the bitter herbs is because the bitterness that occurs in our life, that is there for us to transform it into something sweet. Again, like we discussed in the last episode, it is our opportunity to take will to receive to become will to bestow. And so through that bitterness, when we transform it, and we do, what does it become? It becomes the next thing on the plate. It becomes a victory. It becomes netzach, which means victory. And what do we have in that space on the Seder plate? The chorosis, which is sweet. And so what Hashem does for us is properly balance chesed and gevurah to create these beautiful opportunities for us, which taste bitter at first, so that we can transform them into something sweet like chorosis. And the final part on the left side, hod, which means splendor, is the karpas, the vegetable. And what that means is that whenever we transform a challenging situation and we become victorious through it, we grow through that experience, we always have to remember to bring it back to the realization that us transforming that bitterness into sweetness is something that we could have never done without Hashem's help. We brought the desire to accomplish it. Hashem brought the support and the help. So we always have to remember and always bring it back to Hashem. Sometimes the risk when we get to that point of victory, when we achieve something great, is we can become arrogant and then block the shefa, block the flow from the heavenly realm into the physical realm, into our lives. So we have to remember to bring it back to Hashem, that Hashem made it all happen, and then that allows everything to flow through. And on the order of the Seder, there's 15 steps in the order of the Seder, starting with Kaddish and ending with Nirtzah. 15, all number combinations are significant. 15 is a number you probably recognize. Every morning in our morning blessings, there are those 15 brakas, we say, that express our gratitude to Hashem. Beginning with being able to distinguish between day and night, being able to delineate between permitted, prohibited, and ending with the braka that he is the one that gives us strength. 15. And when the men of the Great Assembly created the Seder, they were replicating the entire process of going to the temple. And the temple had 15 steps as well, not by accident. The gematria for 15 is Yud and Hey, the first part of Hashem's name, of the Yud, Hey, and then the Vav and the Hey. The first Yud and Hey represents Hashem's revelation in the spiritual world, and the Vav and the Hey are the way he manifests himself and makes himself known in the physical world. So when you see something with the number 15, and gematria again is a Yud and a Hey, that means it is a pathway to much higher consciousness. And that is what the Passover Seder is about. It is about going through these steps to reach a much higher level of consciousness, getting much more in tune with our spiritual selves. And what's interesting is that when you study a course in the Torah, the story of the redemption, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is everywhere. He is a key, pivotal part of what is taking place. However, he's nowhere mentioned in the Haggadah. The sin of the golden calf was a result of people thinking that Moshe Rabbeinu had died and that they would have no connection to Hashem without him. And they needed an intermediary, hence the need to create an idol. Moshe Rabbeinu is our guide. He is someone that perfected himself and gave us a model of what we should aspire to become. But he's not our intermediary in order to connect to Hashem. We'll leave the need for human intermediaries to the Christians for now. That's not for us. That's why his name is not mentioned. However, an idea I read from the Breslov Haggadah is that the first item listed in the Seder is Kadesh, and it has a numerical equivalent of 404, which is also the numerical equivalent of Das, knowledge. The knowledge of Hashem. And we end the Seder with Nirtzah, and its numerical equivalent is 345, the same gematria as the word Moshe. So through this process, we are acquiring the Das of Moshe. Another idea from the four sons is that when you read this, contemplate. There's a wise son, a wicked son, a simple son, and one who is unable to ask. Some translations is sleeping, not engaged. The reality is I know for myself that when I look at my life over the last year, I have been all of these. There are times when I've been mentally on task. I've been the wise son. What is the risk of being the wise son? And that is that one can become arrogant. Not that one should not aspire to be wise, but that is one of the things that one becomes more susceptible to. And of course, once that arrogance creeps in, it's like your growth is hitting a cement wall and you can't progress and you have to go back. I have been the wayward son, a little despondent, frustrated. We all have these periods where our emunah is constantly, God willing, increasing, but it's a pattern of Rabbi Nachman calls is running and returning. We're advancing to new heights. Hashem gives us a momentum, lifts us higher than where we have actually earned, and then he drops us back. But when he drops us back, we're at a higher level than where we began. And we begin the journey again of running. He pushes us higher to see where we can get to and drops us back down. So it's this constant taking 3 steps forward and a few steps back and 3 steps forward, a few steps back, but we are continually advancing. In those periods of returning, you can get into a state like the wayward son, and you can become a little despondent and frustrated, but then you work your way out of that. You realize you've been in this pattern before. It's part of the process. There's the one who is unable to ask, or the translation in the Breslov by Rabbi Nachman is sleeping, where we're just not feeling inspired. We're not feeling motivated in our Yiddishkeit. I've been there too. And there, I know what my protocol is. Time to maybe put down whatever test I've been studying and just sit back with the book on emunah, something to inspire me and get me going again. Rabbi Nachman says the ideal state to be in, the simple son. He writes a lot about this. The simple son is the ideal. It's where we want to be. I mean, look, when we were at Mount Sinai, we said we will do when we're here. That was just pure simplicity. We have no idea what you're telling us to do, but we'll do it because we trust in you and we believe in you, Hashem. That's what got us the 2 crowns. That's what had our Yetzirah removed from us, removed death from us until we flubbed it up with the golden calf. But that simplicity, that is so powerful. And that's really what we're trying to get to at Pesach, is knowing, Hashem, there's a lot of stuff that's totally out of control in my life. I have no idea how it's going to work out. And Hashem, I know from his perspective, saying, I know, I designed it that way. Like he wants us sometimes when we really want to grow to make things chaotic, to not know in our mind how things are going to work out. It's the one thing I remember from last year, Rabbi Brody impressed upon me. He said, Dan, it's time for you to get past your reason. You need to get past, you need to know how everything's going to sort of work out. Hashem wants to get you to a state of uncertainty and chaos, because that's when your emunah and bitachon gets really developed to the greatest level. And that's the simple son. Like whatever Hashem's bring, it's all good. And we need to get to that. Just be a simple Jew and get to that just pure state of emunah and bitachon, because that's the essence of trust in our Creator. And one more idea, my friends, to share with you, something I've been contemplating, is the area in the Haggadah where it talks about the other nations in every generation rising up to annihilate us. And I want you to consider this. Don't approach this from Hamas, Hezbollah, these other nations actually trying to invoke physical harm. We're not in control of that. What we are in control of is our inner world, and that's where our battle is taking place. One of the things I've been asking myself is, how is the nations of the world, how are they attacking me? How are they influencing me? We're so bombarded by the outside world, it's very difficult to not be influenced, to have our hashkafa, our worldview altered, tweaked because of it. I notice the only social media that I'm on now is LinkedIn. And every now and then I will peruse it. Someone will send me a note. And the attitude of, my network, nothing against them, but it's people in the financial service, investment industry. Everyone's very career focused, to the point where many, it's like their life, their entire identity is all about career and financial success. That is, they define themselves by that. And I can tell when I've spent some time on LinkedIn, I start to adapt that. It's like, yeah, I need to put more time on this. I need to focus on this. And it's so dangerous. It's not who we are. Yeah, we want to strive. We want to be successful, but we know where our success comes from. We want to put in our histaldus and we want to do our work and we want to do things with integrity, but we make room for Hashem in our livelihood. We know we have focus. We have Torah learning to do. We have other things that are part of the fabric of our life. One of the things Hashem instilled in us in Mitzrayim was he had Pharaoh have us build buildings on top of quicksand, our very soft soil, so that when we finished completing this building, it would tumble down. What was Hashem trying to instill in us? Making a building and then just having it collapse in front of our eyes. We couldn't even take pride in what we just spent all this time working towards. It just collapsed. What is he instilling in us? And it is this, my friends. We want to focus our efforts on building things that have permanence. Is building a business, does that bring permanence? Yes, if we keep things in the proper perspective. If we run a business, create lots of money, God willing, I'll make lots of parnasa this next year. Hashem wants that for us, but we understand our role in the business and we understand Hashem's role. And we conduct ourselves like yids, conducting ourselves like a mensch with all our interactions, of course, total integrity, not chasing after the money so we can buy several yachts and this mansion and that mansion and flaunt it. No, we're modest with our things. And we use our wealth to help out others and give tzedakah. So building a business in that manner or being involved in your profession, that is doing things for Hashem. That is building permanence or wherever we're engaged in. But when I see people that are just like, there's no God in the picture, it is just like, purely this is what defines me. When their time comes to go to Shemayim, if you remember from listening to Rebbetzin Friedman's near-death experiences, and nobody was asked, how much money did you make? It was about how did you make people feel, which means what did you do with your money? You know, so they're just building buildings on soft soil. In the end, they won't hold, and they're vesting their entire self to this one idea. Their entire identity is built on this. And again, I want to reinforce that doesn't mean we won't pursue our own financial success, but we build our businesses on a proper foundation of Torah values and what the purposes of it, what we're trying to accomplish with it. Again, and what we want to accomplish is go back to what we spoke last week, will to bestow, not will to receive. So these are just a few ideas, my friends. I hope it will get you into the proper mindset. May we all have our redemptions, see some real growth on the forefront. I'm looking forward to going through this process with all of you. If you have not joined the Shema podcast for the Perplexed WhatsApp community, please do, because I know I'm probably more empowered to do this week by week, going through this process, knowing that I will have the support group of that community so we can all work together to transform who we are. I will tell you, when I look back at who I was a year ago, I'm embarrassed about it. And then I realized that's a good thing. And God willing, I want to grow. I want us all to grow in every way possible so that next year, when we're having this conversation, we'll look back on right now and we'll say, I can't believe I was that person. They were at such a low level. That's what we want. So much growth, much success. May your Pesach preparations go smoothly and have a beautiful and wonderful Pesach, my friends.
Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed the episode and found it meaningful, please take a moment to rate, review, and share the podcast. To share feedback, suggest future topics, or ask questions for the host or his guests, you can email him at shemapodcastshow@gmail.com. That is shemapodcastshow@gmail.com, or click the show notes to join the growing WhatsApp community.